Welcome to Candid Conversations with Dr. Kelly, where we dive deep into the conversations that matter most to your mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Kelly Utenham, a passionate advocate for brain health and wellness. And here on this podcast, we explore candid conversations about life, health, and the stories that shape us. Whether it's about mental health, sports, or simply navigating everyday challenges, we keep it real, raw, and relevant. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate this.
Of course. And I apologize in advance for my tiredness. I just got off set. I just did a whole 2-hour show. So
Completely understand, and even more thanks for doing this coming off of that. So I would love to know just how much you are familiar with concussion and TBI, what you've heard about CTE and whatnot.
yeah, so I actually went on a deep dive into CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and all things concussions from like 2016 to maybe 2018.
Okay.
I stopped researching it because I started to know too much. And I started to know too much, and it'll just like freak you out and all the things. My dear friend, Dr. Kristen Willenheimer, she wrote a book called Biohack Your Brain that I actually wrote the forward, or either the forward or one of the things on the back too. And so I've done a lot of research on it. I just stopped because I just started to know too much, and I was like, it's unnecessarily scary.
Yes. So what you learned, can you relate to anything or any teammates? I know that your brother plays as well. Have you noticed anything with yourself, with what you've experienced and learned?
It's interesting, there's oftentimes you can become too much of like a worry warrior, if you will.
Yes.
So I only played 4 years in the league. I only played 4 years in the league primarily because I was concerned about my physical body. And after 4 years, you're vested pension with annuity. So I left the NFL in large part to preserve my mental and physical health. I thankfully only had a concussion once in college, and I didn't even realize I had a concussion at the time because concussions weren't popping back then. This was in 2010. We had just played a game in Nebraska, and back in the day, the concussion test was who's the president and what day of the week is it?
Right.
And obviously it was Saturday because I was playing a college game, so I answered Saturday. The president was notably Obama. That was a big deal. I wasn't going to forget that. And they put me right back in the game. I don't remember the plays of the game. I remember asking my backup every time I went to the sideline, and they told me the plays, and I went out and I played. I don't even remember the game. I remember watching film of the game. I realized I had a concussion because I got back home and I went to a friend's house, and I was like, hey, I'm outside. And she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, yes, I am. She's like, no, you're not. I was like, how you gonna tell me where I am? She was like, well, come to the street. So I walked to the street, and I was an entire like two complex buildings away. You know how apartment complexes have like an A, B, and C unit. I was at like the A building, and she lived at the C unit. And I was like, oh man, I must have a concussion. And so that's when I checked myself into the doctors, and I didn't play the following week, etc. So I wouldn't say that they impact concussions impact my life present day or head trauma, but part of me is like, oh, if I forgot something, oh, was that because I had head trauma? So I just kind of I played as efficiently as possible and got out as soon as possible.
Which is so rare.
It is, but I get it. Most people, if you can play as long as possible and earn, generational wealth, then you do so. I realized that I could do more, potentially, and by the grace of God, it's worked. But I also didn't realize how wise a decision it was until I started studying concussion.
So, what have you noticed with like teammates that you may still communicate with who either may still be playing or who played for longer than you? Do you hear anything that they talk about with like what they experience with like maybe memory or word finding or anything like that?
It's a good question. No, I don't. But the reason I don't is several reasons. One, because I'm the one on TV now, I have such different groups of friends and associates and whatnot. The athletes I'm on TV with, wide receiver, running back, as you well know, those aren't uber contact positions. You know, it was linemen that are in the contact positions. Also, I'm only 33. And so, given that I'm only 33, the teammates that I talk to were anywhere from 28 to 35, which, for the most part, you hopefully would not see, CTE amongst other things. So I also think, and the doctor that I was researching along with, she said this, like, we are with our knowledge of the brain where we were with our knowledge of the heart in the 1960s and 70s. So like we just don't know what we don't know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So no, I don't really have too many teammates that know too much. Right now, CTE is still like a punchline of a joke, unfortunately, if you log on social media. So I still think we don't know what we don't know.
Understood. Understood.
No, this is fascinating. I've never realized the role of speech language pathologists in, brain injuries, etc. I'm primarily familiar with them, as you referenced, in regards to like, speaking and kids and impediments and this and that. So somebody who spent a lot of time studying the brain, I'm actually not familiar. So this is fascinating.
Oh, good. Good. Um, you are like phenomenal. From what I have seen in my research of you. And I'm very glad that your brain seems to be beautifully intact. And I'm glad that you're able to report just one concussion. So this question may be a little different for you given you don't show significant signs or anything, but given like now the information that you've heard here today and then information that you have researched on your own, one, would you do everything the same? And then two, what would you tell young people about playing?
Brilliant questions. Um, yes, I would do everything the same. I
Okay.
would do everything the same because I believe I maximized both worlds. I didn't maximize the NFL world, but I got enough juice out of that squeeze to propel me. Meaning, I would do it the same because I would still want to play in the NFL. Because through playing in the NFL, it gave me a platform to, write the books that are behind me and win the Emmys that are behind me, and by the grace of God, do so many more things. But I would also leave the NFL after 4 years, just as I did, to avoid incurring any more injuries. I think I did it as well as it could be done for how I want to do things, since I value my intellect so much. What would I encourage young people? I had a conversation at a conference called South by Southwest. Not sure if you've heard of it. It's a festival in Austin, Texas. And I moderated a panel in 2017 with athletes, coaches, athletic directors about CTE. And I would I would continue to encourage young people to play because I would suggest at this junction in time, the benefits of sports and team sports still currently outweigh the negatives. Kind of to your point of one of the last slides. I would encourage safety, but the dilemma is prior to, I believe, 14, I think like equestrian and soccer are more dangerous than sports like football, particularly even as it pertains to head trauma with equestrian, and all trauma as it pertains to soccer. So I would still suggest to play because of the teamwork, the camaraderie, the overcoming adversity, the physical and emotional fitness, all of that you garner from sports. I would still encourage to play. I wouldn't necessarily encourage like certain football players to be such like go take somebody's head off. But I think people would take the chance at CTE for a $40 million contract.
Right.
And I understand it. I wouldn't personally. I think I can make $40 million elsewhere. But I understand. I had some teammates who, like, if that's your only way to get your family out the hood
Yeah.
is to play the game recklessly and violently, I get it. I get it. So that's my overarching thought. But I've had to wrestle with this question for nearly a decade now.
Yes. So this is a very touchy subject, and you, again, not presenting with signs or looking like you're struggling with anything cognitively, which is wonderful. Um, what would you say about just arming themselves with the knowledge? Because what I'm finding when I speak with athletes, youth and professional, is that there's not a lot of information. There's like a requirement that, maybe you got to sign this piece of paper that says that, you read about the risks of CTE, but there's nothing in depth like a mandatory hour-long session or just information like this to where they could at least know there is a risk, but I need to be leaning on the side of playing safely. Like, what would you?
I mean, there's a politically correct answer and there's a real answer.
I
Um, my the politically correct answer is, of course, mandated, every quarter, that athletes sit in things like this. As somebody who sat in the chair, the team meeting room chair, if you will, the athlete chair, I wouldn't want to give an athlete this kind of information while they're playing.
Okay.
Analysis by analysis. That's kind of, our coaching jargon, if you will. I wouldn't want to arm them with this information because you can't go out and play a game that is a contact sport and try to find ways to avoid you just can't do it. You just can't do it. You
Yeah.
can't do it. So inevitably you would end up playing the game scared and you just couldn't really play the game. So again, I told you I had to stop researching
Yeah.
because I started to learn too much. And I was like, wait, every
You
time I
researching
forgot.
when we were playing?
No, I didn't start until I was done.
Okay.
I sat down with, I don't know if you're familiar with the name Justin Strelzik. Justin Strelzik was a teammate of Mike Webster. He drove the wrong way down the I-95 in Pittsburgh, head on into a tank truck. I sat down, interviewed his wife one-on-one. I did plenty of different interviews with different, anywhere from neuroscientists to people alike, and I had to stop. So I couldn't have done it while I was playing, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to do it while playing. Maybe their loved ones could, but nah, not them.
Okay, okay. So how do you have a tough conversation when, like, afterwards, the repetitive statement is, "I wish I would have known." Like, how do you
I
approach?
think it's up to the medical professionals playing to help athletes protect themselves from themselves. That's really what I think it is. I think it's up to, thankfully we have the independent neurologists now. Thankfully we have spotters now. Um, I think it's up to, thankfully, I saw that I think it's in Pittsburgh. There's a new test that's being developed that you can actually check for concussions based upon saliva. We'll see how that continues to develop. I think it's up to the people who don't have the investment.
Yeah.
The athletes are too far in the forest to see the trees. I think that's how I would approach it. I would approach it there. Now, to your point, with the egg and the yolk, right? Obviously, the helmet protects the skull from fracture. It doesn't protect the brain from injury, right? So you can only do so much with helmets. But just to somebody who's researched it so much. I mean, I got my master's degree in sports psychology, right? So I love the brain.
Yes.
I just, I would I would give the burden to the neuroscientists, the independent neuroscientists, the spotters, and the team physicians. I wouldn't give the burden to the athlete. Um, it's just, yeah, I wouldn't do it. No, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that it's right. I don't think it's the right decision. It's
This
just
is all fabulous information. What do you think about if you share with the athlete or with their loved ones, with knowing there is help, speech therapy?
I think sharing it, there's discernment in that. Athletes, though, we look through the keyhole. We don't open up the door.
Okay.
And so while playing, you're here. So like, okay, cool. There's help over there. I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that when I'm done. I'm just trying to make it from Tuesday to Tuesday because on Tuesdays is payday in the NFL. So I'm just trying to make it to Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, so I can get that check. So yeah, you can share that there's help, but athletes, they tell us there's a lot of help about a lot of stuff. And people don't take it up. I mean, I went to get my grad degree because in the NFL, they'll pay for your master's degree. The NFL will while you're in the NFL, but only 2% of athletes do it.
Mm.
Right. So there's a ton of help, and there's all the resources in the world. People just you're here because it's hard to make it, so you kind of got to stay there. So I believe in sharing that there's help to some degree, but I've been on the other side, and so sometimes it can be a lost cause. I would want to share that there's help to the people that have the bandwidth to receive it.
Okay. Okay. What's a friendly, non-threatening way to even approach that? Because again, I know this is very touchy and
I think the loved ones, I think the significant others. I
okay.
think the significant others, I think they need to be aware of the signs. They have the bandwidth to receive it. They care the most because they're the most imminently affected outside of the athlete.
Yeah.
So when the spouse comes home and they forget, you know, where to park the car, and their spouse can know, like, oh wait, you might have a concussion, right? I think the significant others more than the athletes. The significant others, for the most part, run the show, especially during the season. So that would be the most effective use of one's time, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, I have wonderful connects to wonderful athletes like yourself. I do not to significant others. How would you recommend speaking to a significant other?
It's a great question. I think by means of the athlete, like, hey, as you hit up the athlete, like, hey, could I sit down with your X, Y, and Z, your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife? Um, because I think they're the ones who, one, are often overlooked and forgotten because so often we just focus on the athlete, the athlete, the athlete, but they are kind of the secret to the success of the household.
Yes.
So I think one, they would appreciate it more. They would receive it more. They wouldn't view it as an inconvenience and a waste of time, but rather like, oh wow, you want to talk to me? So I would probably go through the athlete, um, and or yeah, that's as it pertains to significant others. If I were trying to talk to teams, and you got to go to the NFLPA,
Hmm.
all that stuff, but they're so oversaturated with outreach. But I think the significant others would be the best. Like this what you just showed me, showing it to a football player's spouse, it'd be way more well received than showing it to the player. Players in one ear, out the other.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. Do you think it would be the same for college athletes? Obviously not with a significant other, but how is it with the in one ear out the other?
They're even worse because they're kids. Oh gosh, the college athletes are worse. Man, you try to present something to college athletes. Now, keep in mind, college athletes, you're more likely to speak to teams, like the whole team,
Yes.
than you are to speak to an athlete individually. But because remember, college athletes are busier. You got class, you got mandatory study hall, you got weights, you got film, plus you got practice, and then you're trying to find a girl or a guy to date you. And now you want to talk to me about this? At least in the league, you only got practice. You know what I'm saying? Then you're going home. But college is you're even busier and you're younger. And you think, remember, when you're so young, death to you is so far away. CTE is so far away. Right? Everything you're talking about is so far away. Even
Yes.
the youngest prominent cases of CTE, obviously we've seen it in high schoolers, but even the junior Seaus of the world. I mean, he was, in his 40s. So when you're an 18-year-old kid's like, hey, you're talking about old people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my thought process. But speaking to teams, Makes more
Team.
sense than just trying to speak to the athlete.
What about like coaches conferences and where they go to convene annually or regionally or what have you? Do you think coaches would be open?
Trainers,
Say it again.
not the coaches, it's the trainers.
Trainers. Okay.
Oh yeah, you don't want to, because if you're a coach, you're telling me something that's going to keep my athlete from being on the field. Furthermore, you're telling me something that's not in my peer view. Go talk to them. Like they're the ones who are dictating if the athlete can play or not. You know what I mean? Not necessarily me. It's a head athletic trainer, right? So it's the trainer that you want to talk to more than the coach.
So I had and athletes that I've spoken to, they have said like their thing is like put me in coach, like wherever I just want to play, I want to play. So even if it means moving my position, but the comment that was made is if the players have that trust from the coach that like their spot isn't going to be taken, or it's like okay, you have a concussion, your spot is safe, but just get better. The knowledge of the coach of this sort of information could be helpful possibly. What are your thoughts on that?
Case by case basis.
Okay.
When I had my concussion in college, I was already a starter. So I didn't mind missing the next game because I knew I'm coming back to my job. But case by case basis, I don't think that's an overarching truth. The overarching truth is obviously if you have more job security, you're more prone to be able to miss time. But if you have more job security, you're also probably a harder worker because you probably worked yourself into a position to have job security. So you probably don't want to miss time anyway.
Yeah.
But either way, educating a coach on injuries, educate a coach on a playbook. You know what I'm saying? Like coaches don't necessarily deal with the injuries. They just go to their meetings with their trainers at 7 a.m. every day and say who's practicing, who's not, why not. Cool.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I think when Tua Tagovailoa had his injury, his coach put him back in the game.
Yes.
He put him back in the game because the trainer cleared him, not the coach.
Mm.
So if the trainer wouldn't have cleared him, then Tua couldn't have gone back in. When Tua goes out to the sideline, he talks to the trainer, he talks to the spotter, does a concussion test. Coach asks the trainer, "Hey, is Tua cleared?" "Yep, he's cleared." "All right, Tua, go back in." Now, coach could have overruled it, but
Okay.
coach got to deal with that because if the trainer clears him, the trainer cleared him. So how are you gonna overrule a trainer? Trainer the one that got the MD. You know what I'm saying? So it's a trainer thing.
Okay. All right. Very interesting and very helpful. Thank you.
Of course, of
Thank
course.
you. If you don't mind, I just want to look carefully, make sure I didn't miss any questions. Oh, yes, quickly. Prior to the NFL, think about college, youth sports, and I know that you played basketball and track and field and all of that. At any point in any of these sports, at any of these levels of play, were you educated on any of this brain health information and how
No,
much? None.
no, no, no. But remember, we didn't talk about concussions or CTE really until the movie Concussion.
Right.
Only reason I cared a ton is Benedict Amalu's Nigerian and I'm Nigerian. So that's the only reason I was really extra partial. If I wasn't Nigerian, I probably would have just been like, oh, cool. But I was watching the movie to see Will Smith's accent, which was terrible, by the way. But I love Will Smith. So so no, we weren't no, we weren't even we didn't talk about concussions until I think like 20, I would say 14. It started to become a big deal. 20,
Okay.
2013.
Have you connected with Dr. Amalu?
Nah. I've reached out to different people for different things and different reasons. Now, I want to get connected to the people who are figuring out how to test for concussions on the sideline with like a mouth swab or something.
Hmm.
But nah, I got out of the brain space, man. Where's that book? Uh,
Understood.
yeah, I
I
got
do
out.
want to, I would like to know that book that you wrote the foreword for.
Yeah, biohack your brain. Let me see.
Okay. So
Yeah,
perhaps I may start with youth sports to give the education super early, and then they'll have it to move forward versus sharing it with athletes.
that's smart. That makes a lot of sense. Youth sports and youth parents, they'll care the most.
Okay.
They'll
AAU.
care the most. Yeah, they'll care the most. Even like sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, you parents, they'll care the most
Okay.
for sure.
Okay. Well, you've answered all my questions.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Of course, job well done. Job well
Thank
done.
you. Thank
Keep
you.
on keeping on. You're doing the hard work.
I am. I want to do it respectfully. I want to do it where people know I'm here to help and not hinder or scare or make people stop. It's just let's do it.
Thank you for tuning in to Kandid Conversations with Dr. Kelly. I hope today's discussion left you inspired, informed, and ready to take on your next challenge with a clearer mind. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep striving for a healthier mind and a happier life. I'm Dr. Kelly, and this has been another Kandid Conversation.